good morning. It's really nice to be here. The work that I do is about taking senior managers and high potential managers to the next level of leadership effectiveness. The areas we work with them are things like delegation, assertiveness, influencing skills, inspiring people, prioritization, creative thinking, and so on. Now, the problem we usually face is not about a knowledge gap. People usually know what they need to do. The question is, why aren't they doing what they know they need to be doing? And to kind of make this relatable to your own lives, we know a lot of the things we need to do. Don't get nervous in an interview. Finish your assignments well in time. So why is it so difficult to do the things that we know we need to do? Well, one of the reasons is that people don't realize what they're doing. They intellectually understand what a good manager needs to do, but they don't realize that the behaviors they're doing are inconsistent with their theoretical understandings. Nobody wakes up and says, today I'm going to be an indecisive manager. Nobody says, today I'm going to be a micromanager. They're doing it because they become accustomed to certain ways of doing it, and the behavior is completely unconscious and transparent to them. Now, one way that companies try and address this, or some of the ways that companies try and address this, is through evaluations, appraisals, 360 feedback, assessment centers done by external observers, etc. But it's only partially successful. And the reason is because anytime people get feedback that contradicts their ideas of who they are, they tend to discount it. They say, okay, well, that person thinks this about me, I think this about me, these don't match, but I know myself better, and so they must be wrong, right? And so the first conversation we need to have with managers is really feedback is not about right or wrong. There are certain things that fit into the category of right and wrong, and certain that don't. So let me give you an example to illustrate this. If I said outside is 30 degrees centigrade, I'd either be right or wrong. You could take a thermometer and prove whether it's 30 degrees or not, right? But if I said this is a normal day, and somebody from London came and they said, this is a hot day. And I asked you, well, who's right over there? Am I right because I think it's a normal day, or is he right? You'd probably say, well, in a way, you're both right, And I'd go one step further and say, really, the concept of right or wrong is irrelevant in this. It doesn't fit the context, right? It's like saying, what does yellow smell like? Grammatically, it makes sense, but, logically, it's incoherent. Because a lot of the things we get feedback on aren't aspects of objective reality. It's usually not about things like data, like you've achieved 95% of your target or you've achieved 103%. This is an objective fact. People don't usually debate this. Really, the feedback is related to much softer aspects, things like you're a team player. Are you committed or not? Do you have high potential? These are very subjective things, and you can't really talk about right or wrong in this area. So if somebody says to you, I don't experience you as committed, if you say, no, you're wrong, I am, you're kind of missing the point. It's not about right or wrong. It's about this is how you're coming across to people. This is how people are interpreting you. This is the impact you're having on the people around you, and that does have consequences. So the next thing people usually say, okay, I get it. There's no right or wrong. They have their opinion about what I need to be doing. This is my opinion, and so I'm going to do what's comfortable for me. Really, they're saying there's no other option for me but to do what I'm doing. This is what I need to do in order to be effective. So I can't delegate to my team because I've tried it in the past, and when I do, they make mistakes, and this is a really important project. So the way to handle this is really to say, okay, well, maybe the way you're doing things just now is effective at this level. You're a successful manager. Clearly what you're doing is working over here, but it's going to be a limitation at the next level. Is your responsibility going to increase at the next level? Sure it is. Is the workload going to be bigger? Do you need to delegate more? Sure it is, right? So if you want to be effective at the next level, this is something but I can't do this. I can't say no to people, I can't hold people accountable, I can't delegate this particular job, etc., etc. And that's not accurate. So what we usually say to them, hey, if you said I can't fly, I'd agree with that, but I can't delegate, that's not factually true. If you said I'm uncomfortable delegating, I'm scared that something will go wrong, I'm afraid this will happen, it's uncomfortable, all that is fine, but I can't is not accurate. And it's just limiting yourself with the words you're using. So I'll say, okay, I get it. It is possible But it's just not who I am. There's certain things about my personality. This is who I am. I'm just an emotional guy. I can't help losing my temper, for example, or I'm a nice person. I don't like holding people accountable. This is who I am. And over there, we have to kind of separate. We're going into a philosophical conversation, which is really, your behaviors are not who you are. Why have you chosen to make this habit part of your self-identity? And let me give you an example. Let me make a request to all of you sitting in the audience. If you could just cross your arms for a second. Just see what that feels like. And now, cross it the other way. So if your right hand is on top, put the other way around. I can see some of you doing yoga poses. It's uncomfortable, but it's not that the way you cross your arms is a definition of who you are. It's not linked to your self-identity. One way is more comfortable. You've been doing it for a while, but both are equally right. And if you really needed to get comfortable with the other way of doing things, over a period of time, you could practice and make it more comfortable. It's like learning any new skill. Like when you learn driving, initially it requires a lot of conscious effort. Change the clutch, press the clutch, change the gear, look at the rear view mirror. But over a period of time, it just becomes really natural, right? And so that's what we have people say. This is not who you are. This is just behavior. So when you say I'm an introvert, I can't do networking. Sure you can. It's going to be uncomfortable, and then it gets easier. If you say I can't hold my team accountable, that's not who I am. Sure you can. It'll just take time, So then they get it. They say, okay, you know what? I can change the behavior, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and usually people are very lazy in changing behaviors because it requires a lot of conscious effort. So the next step is really finding out what's important to this person. What would make it worthwhile for this person to change their behaviors, And usually it's linked to their sense of self-identity, the values, who they are as people. Let me give you a few examples to illustrate how we would cover this area. So I was working with a Malaysian manager, a technical manager. He was in charge of a very big technical project. And he wasn't delegating any of his work. And he was overwhelmed with the workload, staying late. His subordinates were underutilized. The project was behind schedule. It was a big project. And what we found was similar things were happening in his personal life. His son was 18 years old. He was a Muslim gentleman, and his son had started seeing a girl. And this was very much against his culture. He kept on criticizing his son for this behavior and was creating a distance where the son wasn't speaking to the father. And when we sat down and talked about it, he realized that the message he was sending to his son was that you're not a man. You can't make your own decisions. I'm going to make the decisions for you. And the same message he was sending to his team, that you're not competent. I need to make these decisions. And the question was, is this who you want to be? The fear of making a mistake and looking bad to your manager, has that become so important to you that you're willing to compromise your son's growth, his autonomy, and your team's development, professional development? Is this who you want to be? And as he heard this, and as he thought about this, he said, you know what, that's right. And he called his son's girlfriend over, had dinner with the family, and said, you know what, you're a man, my son, I respect you. And with his team, he said, I'd like to take you guys to the next level. So you've got to link it to something that's really important to the person. Another example is a fairly senior Indian leader that I worked with, and very good at his job, but prone to outbursts, emotional outbursts, shouting at his team, screaming, etc. And he'd had 2 heart attacks. His behavior, he'd had 2 heart attacks. He had a pacemaker in his heart, and his basic thing was, this is just who I am. I can't change this. This is like, I've been doing this for so many years. I can't change this behavior. And again, the question was, what is really important to you? What do you really enjoy in life? And he said, the most important, meaningful thing to me is my 3-year-old granddaughter, watching her play. And the question we asked him was, do you want to see her get married? Because the way you're going 20 years from now, we're not really sure you're going to make it with these kind of heart attacks and this behavior. And he thought about that, and he got it. And he said, I've got to change. I've got to change. This is not working. I've become like a volcano, and once in a while I erupt, and the lava flows down and burns all the people who are close to me, and they forgive me. But I notice every time they build their villages a little further away from the volcano, and I'm becoming isolated, and I'm going to change this behavior. So emotional arousal is all about linking the behaviors that they're working on to what is really important to them, what is meaningful to them. And when they do that, and they experience a cognitive dissonance, when they see some of the behaviors are inconsistent with their values and priorities, it creates an emotion. And if you think about what the word emotion means, it comes from the Latin word immover. that which moves you. Emotion, that which puts you in emotion. If you just have this conversation at an intellectual level, it doesn't generate the fuel required to change deeply ingrained behaviors. So then you have a choice. This is what I've been doing. These are the advantages. These are the disadvantages. There's a risk to changing my new behavior. If, for example, I've decided that, I want to prioritize certain jobs and I say no to my boss, I can't take that project on, I'm working, there's a risk. There's a risk that he's going to think that I'm not committed to my job, or I'm lazy, I'm not willing to take on responsibility. So every choice has its advantages and disadvantages, and you've got to weigh up the pros and cons, do an inventory, and then take a choice. Make a choice. And it's not like I have to, I can't, which implies that you don't have a choice. Not even the wimpy, I should do it. It's really, once you've kind of done the pros and cons, either I will or I won't. Let's not waste time doing the I should do this, etc. Let's make a clear choice. And once you've done that, make a declaration. Not just to yourself. So, there are websites where you can send yourself an email, say, okay, 3 months from now, send me an email saying, have you done this? I'm going to make a declaration to myself. It's a really important step, because over here you're stopping reacting to the world and you're proactively creating the direction. You're creating what you really want to do. But not just make a declaration to yourself, but make declarations to other people. Tell people, this is what I plan to do. This is what I'm going to be doing differently. If you see me not doing this, please let me know. Now, over here, some managers get resistant, say, oh man, if I tell my subordinates that I'm, going to start delegating or give them more space, they'll keep holding me accountable. And I say, well, that's kind of the point. That's kind of the point. Why would you not do that and leave yourself that open back door that you can sneak out? Let people know, if you're going to fail, okay, you know what, we'll start again. We'll make this work. And if you're afraid that people will kind of bring you down, or as soon as you make a mistake, they'll say, haha, you said you would do this and you're not doing that. Well, ask them for help. Say, I need your help on this. I know that my behavior in the past has led to the conclusion that I'm not going to do it, but this is important to me. I need your help. If you see me slipping back into the ways of behavior that I've committed to changing, please let me know, right? Declaration is very powerful, right? But the next stage is planning. People jump into action without adequately thinking of all the different obstacles they could face, and they usually end up failing and falling back and saying, I've tried it, it doesn't work. So planning means more granularity. It's like, which things am I going to delegate, for example? Who am I going to delegate it to? How do I need to communicate such that the probability of this successfully happening raises? What is the development work I need to do? How frequently do I need to speak to them? What are the excuses I'm going to use to justify not doing this? In what situations am I likely to, in pressure, fall back? Who are the people who can help me? Is it my boss? Can I speak to him once every 2 weeks and say, boss, could you give me feedback? What are the systems and process I can use? So is it a daily alarm? Maybe once every day an alarm goes off and for 1 minute I stop and just reflect, am I doing the things that I'm committed to doing? A full planning. It's really important to say, what sort of situations can I slip in and what do I need to do? And then there's the next stage, which is practice. A lot of these habits have been generated over 20, 30, 40, even 50 years for people. And it's not possible to change it overnight. Even if you know intellectually what you need to do, when you actually go to your boss and say, boss, I'm not going to take that project on, you may know I'm a high performer, I'm doing it, this is impossible for me to do, but in your body you'll feel a little sense of discomfort. And so the practice period is about over 3 months. I'll keep practicing this. And how we supplement this from an external consultant point of view is maybe we'll have coaching calls once every 2 weeks with an external coach, talk about what's working, what's not working, what you're learning, what you're going to do in the next step. Let's review what happened in the previous 2 weeks so you keep on working. Now, in addition to that, you can also supplement this journey by reading appropriate literature. If it's something like assertiveness, well, get a book on assertiveness. Watch a movie if you want to inspire a team. Go watch Chuck Day. Watch other movies, which makes the thing top of mind. Find role models. Speak to people who are good at the action that you're trying to develop. Interview them. Ask them how they go about it. Make a schedule about who you're going to speak to when. It's almost like a project management. Don't leave it to chance. Now, the next stage, what happens by the end of the practice stage, is the behaviors, instead of uncomfortable, become more comfortable, more natural. This is about 3 months. Maintenance is over a longer period of time, so maybe 1 year, 2 years. And really what this is about is, in maintenance, under pressure, you might slip back. you know. And so this is about really being able to bring out these behaviors even under pressure. But it doesn't require as frequent a follow-up. So maybe a quarterly newsletter, writing a blog once every 2 weeks, talking about my learnings, these sort of things to make it sustainable. If you're a real introvert and you need to network, it's going to take you a year, 2 years to become really comfortable and good at this behavior. And the final step is completion, which is once everything is done, you get promoted and you move to the next level. Now, the reason all this is important is because life in a certain way is a journey of self-discovery and learning, and the depth of the learning determines your quality of life. But learning doesn't happen in a moment. It's not an insight, it's not a decision, it's not a takeaway. In fact, it's more like a project. It's more like a process, it's more like a journey. And so the recommendation I have for you for the rest of the day is if you see something interesting, you know, maybe there's a talk on mind mapping, don't just go, okay, I understand that, because understanding is the booby prize, right? It's actually implementing and say, okay, you know, how am I going to apply this? Treat it as a project management thing. How am I really going to ingrain and implement this in my life, you know? And the final perspective I just want to leave you with is that, you know, TED and TEDx is about ideas worth spreading. But those ideas are only worth spreading if you actually go and implement them. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Technical team, is that video over now?
Yeah, my professor, the video is done. Prof, the video is done.
Mr. Munguru, I guess I can speak now.
Yes, Professor, you're welcome. The audience is waiting for you, sir.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity.